Kamala Harris, some people have ridiculed her as being dumb. And if you listen to what she said for the election, you'd be like, maybe she's an idiot.
Yeah.
But it might be that she wasn't actually that dumb. It was that she wasn't bright enough, in that she had so many different factions and trying to keep this whole operation going that she was censoring herself from losing the wrong people, whether it was the woke side of her party or the more sort of conservative side of her party. She couldn't quite have the dialogue to pull it all together. If Biden plays this game that you're describing, she risks losing people. She could lose the right wing of her party. They could just go over to Reform. The left wing could go over to Lib Dems. It can kind of fall apart. It's almost like, is that the realm for that conversation? Farage has a huge advantage. There's only 5 MPs that he's got.
Right,
so he
right. Well, I think the Democrats in the U.S., there's a reason Harris didn't go on any podcasts, a couple of reasons. The first is that the Democrats are so clueless when it comes to the alternative media that they might as well be living in 1970. We invited, by we, I mean a group of major podcasters in the U.S. We've invited Democrats to speak with us. We've offered formal invitations repeatedly for 8 years. And we mediated those invitations through one of the Democrats' central political messengers. And they got the invite. And we couldn't find one who would do it. Not one. Now, Dean Phillips talked to me after he got slaughtered in his presidential campaign because he got betrayed so badly by his Democrat peers. And I've talked to RFK and Gabbard, who are, heretical Democrats. But the thing about the Democrats that is very much worth understanding is all the people who have a voice left or got killed.
Well, but they're anti-pluralist, which, by the way, is they accuse the populists of being anti-pluralist. But if you look at Trump's coalition, it's a pluralist
coalition.
It
certainly is, yes.
And Obama now, anti-pluralism, they can't say anti-populist anymore because that doesn't work. So they're anti-pluralist. But it was the Democrats. I heard your interview of Dean Phillips. And what he's describing is a totalitarian party. So
absolutely. Well, and it's worse than that. It's worse. Or maybe this is a reflection of that totalitarian proclivity. The reason Harris didn't go on podcasts, apart from the fact that the Democrats are completely clueless about the alternative media, and like I said, live in 1970, is that a Democrat won't say anything that hasn't been workshopped.
Right.
And the reason for that is they don't want to offend anyone. Well, if you're not going to offend anyone, you're going to say the most anodyne things, which of course Harris always sounds like she's talking to retarded kindergarten children. Yeah. It's so demeaning. Yeah. And you might say, well, that's the level at which she's capable of conducting discourse, and that might be true, but there is this additional element of the absolute inability of the Democrats to say anything that would offend their most sensitive, progressive junior staffer.
And that's not happening just in the Democrat Party. That's been happening in the progressive movement.
Yes,
basically
definitely.
All American liberals have this censoring, which again fits into my idea that hurty words, they think hurty words end up in genocide. And I would say that the opposition to that, what's happened in return, is Trump doesn't give a damn. He says whatever he wants.
Yes.
And all of that. And you have just a kind of response to the virtue signaling left is the vice signaling right, where, what's the most popular comedy show in the world? It's Kill Tony now.
Right.
Where they find the meekest, these literally disabled people, and they will humiliate them on stage. And everyone's is going to have equal opportunities humiliation, but it's very much a total antithesis of that's happened at the cultural level.
Yeah. Well, you've seen firsthand that proclivity for cowardly virtue signaling in the entertainment industry. And
absolutely.
It's amazing to watch this in the theater community and in the motion picture community in the US. This is starting to fragment. I mean, Hollywood is in catastrophically dire straits. The projections are now that 50% of live theaters will close in the US in the next 3 or 4 years. And part of the reason for that is that who the hell wants to go watch a modern movie? Yeah. They're dull beyond comprehension. Now, there are some bright spots. Sheridan, is that his name? Tyler Sheridan, who did Landman, and Yellowstone.
And Top Gun went through the roof because it
Yeah, right.
no
Yeah, because Tom Cruise is not woke in the least, and he's about the only star left who can pull his weight at the box office. But there are, like, I can see there's been a number of, I've made contact with a number of Hollywood stars who are still private in their interest in what I'm doing.
Love what you're doing.
Yeah, but there's enough of them now so that I can see that that's going to change dramatically. And so I don't know what that'll mean for a democratic reformulation. I've been talking to a friend of mine, the same guy who does the messaging for the Democrats, and I told him after the election that if he could go and find some Democrats that he thought had some leadership potential, that this podcast circuit, that the people I've been in communication with, we'd be happy to talk to them, because all of us are, what would you say, sophisticated enough to understand that it would be real useful for the Trump team to have some opposition that wasn't insane. But my friend's response to that after a couple of months was that he couldn't find a single Democrat he thought had the chops or the moral force to manage a podcast interview. They're also concerned with the soundbite and not offending anyone, that it would just be a disaster.
Yeah, exactly.
Podcasts brutally punish people who won't speak freely.
Exactly.
Right. The comment section will just, it's like being flayed.
Yeah.
And it's clear Harris couldn't manage that and didn't even know that she should.
Bless.
Yeah. It would have been a very interesting thing to see. But I don't know. How do you feel about what's going on in the entertainment industry?
Like you, I have a lot of messages from people that I probably would never have spoken to because they're so famous, who will privately say, I read that book by Andy. No, what's the problem? And
right.
I also think that it might be the case that you're right, that there's a critical mass now that the culture can shift. But what I also see is that there's it might be that the opposition are doubling down and they realize that they're losing. So, for example, you had Oliver Anthony at ARC.
Yeah.
Now, when he blew up onto the storm in 2023 with his amazing song Rich Man North of Richmond, if you look at the attacks he got, it was all ad hominem. This guy should have been, he was the counterculture. He was.
Yes.
He was a hero. He was this working class Rust Belt. He should have been the hero that they.
Well, like J.D. Vance, really.
Like J.D. Vance. He was the musical version of J.D. Vance.
Yeah.
And you'd think that this was, they always virtue signaling and say it's all about the working people.
Yeah.
Here was your hero on a plate. They didn't just ignore him. They wrote all these hit pieces like right-wing influencers have found their new hero.
Yeah.
This happened in the film industry as well with the Sound of Freedom film. And I know you interviewed Tim Ballard, the subject of the film. The attacks from the media were just utterly shocking. Here was a film exposing child sexual exploitation. Here was a film exposing the most evil thing, really, that you could imagine. Maybe it might be the most evil thing going on in America. And
it's a hard competition.
And their response was to slander Ballard with all these accusations, called it conspiratorial, say it's a 4chan film. They just did everything they can to take it down. And even it made a fortune. It actually slayed at the box office. So you thought they're not even money
I know. They're not even motivated by their own self-interest.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a dangerous person,
Yeah, exactly. What you're seeing with those attacks is that they're no longer ignoring, they're attacking because that's maybe the last gasps of this era, of this period, where there'll be, I hope anyway, I pray that we'll break on through and get to the other side where it's like you can talk normally again. I think we're probably there in certain, like I mentioned, Kill Tony or, the podcast circuit. People don't care anymore and people watch those in droves. But these last industries, theatre's supposedly the worst of the lot.